said
All right. It is, what about
he's being very busy.
All right, guys, we're now live.
He actually seemed interested.
Okay, well, time to come on. It is Wednesday night. We are now live. It's Conversations with Cougars, and we got us a special show tonight. We got some key members of the 1985 6A Alabama State champs in the house. We got Chris Holmes, Pat Fitch, Keith Rice, Shane Wood, Lonnie Mathis. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. It's so good to see your faces. How's everybody tonight?
Great.
It's good. Yes.
Well, this is a crew. This is a game, a roundtable discussion that I've wanted to have for quite a while, and I think we're going to have us a fun conversation. What was not fun? I'm going to jog your memories a little bit. Let's back up to that 1984 varsity season. That was not a fun year.
Nope. No.
Chris, Shane, Lonnie, you guys, what do you remember about that year?
Banana.
I will tell you, it was the first losing season in Northview varsity history.
We went 4-6.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a great group of seniors. I felt like I let them down, but it was a mix of the opponents and gelling. I think I really enjoyed the 81 group that you had recently, Bud and Woo and Big Doug, and they said, hey, you know what? Part of their, they didn't make it the year before because they didn't feel like they gelled as well. And then that year that just came together where with us, man, we had Junior, we had Pat, we had just a tremendous group that was hungry and motivated. And so, I think, it was part of the gelling was as much as anything.
Yeah, learning process.
Lonnie, you're right. There were a lot of lessons learned that our junior year or the 84 season, Pat's sophomore year. Yeah. Pat, do you remember that our sophomore year, your ninth grade year, our JV team had an excellent year. We either went undefeated or only lost one game, but you were a ninth grader, but you came up in 10th grade. So our 11th grade year, not many of us played a lot of JV or any JV, but where were you in the mix for the varsity playing time your sophomore year, Pat?
Not much at all. Positions were pretty much in place. JV was excellent my sophomore year, again, like yours. But I didn't get much playing time at all my sophomore year.
Mm-hmm. Shane, I remember at the end of our junior year and just thinking, we're not going to allow this to happen. This is not a dump on the 84 seniors class, but you're right, Chris, there just wasn't that cohesiveness. There wasn't a lot of that single-mindedness. And Shane, do you remember having something along those lines at the end of that season, our junior year?
I do. I remember those guys, they played hard. Again, I didn't see a whole lot of playing time junior year, but I just remember those guys, they had the heart. And vaguely what I remember, a lot of things just didn't go our way that season either. There would be games where the ball just didn't bounce our way. Vaguely. Now this is speaking from a long time ago, but that's kind of, I do remember, everybody playing hard, and it just didn't happen.
There were a lot of close losses. There were a few blowouts, but that just, to me, kind of incentivized us going into that spring and then our senior year. And I'm going to open this up to anybody. If you remember that time period, the spring of our senior Pat's junior year, spring of 85, and then heading into that summer, anything that you guys really kind of bring to memory?
Huge culture change. Huge.
It was. And we had a confidence. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Pat. Go, Pat.
Well, I just wanted to say you all came into your senior year with a mission, a purpose, and you all got yourselves together first as a very small group and then kind of passed that on. So, credit to you all as a senior class for immediately addressing and shifting the culture of our team, because it was a big difference. Felt like a lot of individuals my sophomore year. We were a team my junior year.
I agree 100%. And we, like I said, we had a confidence that you could feel, and it came from that 81 team and those guys that came before us. The things that we learned, the Bruce Johnsons and Butch and Ant Palmer and those guys, just grinding us into dust, day in and day out.
Let me back up just a hair, and I want to see if this resonates. Our junior year, the '84 season, we lost 5 of the first 6 games. Coach Parrish started playing more juniors as the season went on, and it really turned when we beat Foley at home, because I want to say that you, Chris, caught that touchdown pass, homecoming, if I remember correctly. We then beat Blunt, terrible team, Dothan, but then we lost to Carroll. It was the first time our school had lost to Carroll in program history. So we got a lot of playing time the second part of the season, which gave us some of that confidence because we won 3 of the last 4 games. But that spring, we changed the whole offense because I was so good at running the wishbone option that we had no choice but to switch. But we had different personnel. We had all the speed in the world. We had all hands in the world. Plus, we had our superstar Lawrence coming back for yet another all-state season. And those were the kind of things that got me excited that spring. And anyway, I'm going to let you, I talk all the time on this show. I'm going to let you guys share some of those memories and I'll chime in.
Well, I'm always quiet.
Well, Lonnie, let's go to you. Where were you playing on the line at the time, and where were you in the mix for playing time?
I was playing nose guard at the time, and I remember with Steve Jackson. He used to get on my case. Like, you need to pick it up. You need to pick it up. And you're fast. And I'm like, well, I'm gonna do the best I can. And I remember during that year, which is the year I ate all that bananas.
We're gonna get to that. Don't worry.
I remember that.
Oh, don't you think we forgot about that?
But like I said, it was a learning process on the 84. It was a learning process. It was like more, it was about the mentality that we wanted to build, but we wasn't there. We wasn't there yet. But like I said, when we got to our senior year, it's just like we exploded. We know we wanted. We wanted it bad. We want to be like the 81 team. We want it better than anything else we wanted. But I enjoyed it. Think about it. Only thing I didn't like about it when it came to Coach Griffin, do that hoop and holler. Ooh, Lord.
You still got some memories of that, huh?
Yes.
All right, you see that smile right there on Lonnie's face? Raise your show of hands. He would bust you in the mouth, pick you up, and he'd be grinning from ear to ear every play. Yes, sir. I've never seen a player that has enjoyed just knocking the snot out of somebody more than Lonnie Mathis. I know you wore out Mark Smith and Charles Button and anybody else who played center and guard those years in our practices.
Hey, when they told me,
I was fortunate to miss out on that.
I want to think about it. It was me, LaRue, and Morris Ward. When we left the 9th grade, after we finished our season, they asked us if we would go play with the varsity. And I was like, yeah, me and LaRue and Mark Wu, we said, yeah, we'll go out there and play with them. And I can't think what they said. Oh, we got an All-American center. I was like, we really do? Okay. Let me try him.
You did more than try, my friend. You were a key clog right there on that D line. Keith, let me ask you, what did you love or hate about football practices during your juniors and senior years?
What did I love or hate? Well, I hated all the running.
That's a given for all of us.
I remember going back to the 84 season. I remember after we lost to Robert E. Lee the first game of the season.
Got smoked 28-7.
We did. And I remember very vividly that Monday was Labor Day. And I remember, I don't remember if it was Coach Johnson or who it was, but they said, this is Labor Day. That means we're going to work. And I remember at the end of that practice, it was dark. Coach Parrish was walking backwards and we could go in if we caught him. And I remember people dragging me, but that was important because that showed the team came together. Those of us that were not the very best players and not in the best shape and so forth, we were getting each other through it. And that's one of the things I remember. I remember as far as, the good times as far at practice, just being there with you guys and the support that you would get. I remember one time that we had a little altercation that I got in, and I remember a bunch of the guys coming to my aid and, supporting me, but I won't get into all the details of that. But, I remember that. I remember the Thursday practices. I was telling my son the other day, we were talking about, different scoring and so forth. And I said, do you know what a free kick field goal is? And he said, no, what's that, Dad? And I explained it to him. I said, that was one of the things we practiced. We were prepared for everything, every kind of a situation. We were prepared for it. We practiced it, and that's something that I definitely took away from it, the preparation.
Pat, you want to piggyback on that a little bit?
Practice was 100% harder than the games for me. Mr. Lonnie Mathis, Manny, Bobby, Ross, Chris and Rick on the ends, Cassie and Willie as linebackers. Going up against them was harder than anybody I can think of that we played. They were that good and just, made us better on the offensive side of the ball. So, it was tough. Every practice was tough. We went at it. We definitely went at it.
Shane, a lot of guys who come on the show say that the games were easier than practices or made the games much easier, if you will. Was that your experience at all?
Oh, definitely. I mean, practice was tough. Of course, I was with the defensive backs and with Coach Griffin, and he always made it fun too. But yeah, we just, I mean, I remember that across the board. We worked hard in practice. I remember, I guess it was Wednesday when we would have been putting in game plans and all. We'd have printed out sheets that they would hand out to look over plays to be looking out for. But unfortunately, being out wide, I never had to take on any of the guys in the middle. Thank goodness, I got to run away. So I never had to deal with Lonnie. Thank goodness, I was blessed on that.
I can't tell you how many times
I was out there with Chris trying to avoid that.
Well, I can't tell you how many times Lonnie beat me into the backfield where I was supposed to set up to throw. And he just pat me and smile and go back to the line. And and this is nothing against Mark or anybody trying to guard Lonnie. He was just that quick. But Chris, that summer, I can't tell you how many passes and routes we threw and ran. But what it for me, it helped us to bond even more as teammates. And
it did. It did. Yes.
Feel that?
Oh, without a doubt. And of course we had been throwing, playing, pitching catch since 8th grade, but yeah, this at that point our timing came in, and it was, I knew where I needed to be at 1 step, at 2, 3, 4, 5 steps. I knew where I needed to be, and I wanted to make sure you could see that number 2, so you'd feel confident in letting it go. And so,
my friend, it was never, the issue was never, was Chris or David or any of you guys going to be where you needed to be. The question was always, was I going to get the ball to the right spot at the right time? Because in all candor, and we all know this, it took till the back half of the season for all that to really click.
Yeah.
it did.
It really did. And, we had just put it in late spring, worked on it in the summer. No one else was doing it, but it just took us that many reps to get it to where it needed to be. And I just remember Coach Parrish was very upbeat. He was always trying to keep my confidence high. And not that I lost a lot of confidence. I was just frustrated at myself at the time.
Well, you were never worried about David's, because at about the third, Hogan, because about the third play of the game, he's going to come back and say, "Hey, I can beat my guy."
Yes.
Every game, and he's still telling me he's open.
Yes.
Here's the thing.
David was like a Waffle House. He was always open, wasn't he?
Always
Always.
open.
Hey,
Yes.
And most of the time he was right.
He was right. Yes. Yes.
We'll get into that in a little while, but you're right about that. But we had a unique start to our season. We all remember we had our first game was scheduled with Robert E. Lee at home on a Friday, start the season. Hot as hell, humid, just like it always is in Dothan. But the hurricane, I think it was Opal, that came through and pushed our game from Friday to Saturday, and then Saturday to Labor Day, Monday.
Mm-hmm.
And it had rained that night, and I think it had rained that morning, because there was so much, my recollection, there was so much steam coming off of the ground, the not artificial turf, but our natural turf at Rip Hughes. You could hardly catch your breath. You guys recall any of that part of that time, that game?
I remember that game distinctly because I was playing free safety, and at some point in the game, they did a quick kick, and that ball went sailing over my head, and I ran back, and I remembered look back first before I just jumped. So I turned around, and I had time, so I picked it up, and not being used to returning punts, I didn't follow my blocking correctly, so I got creamed. But I got to the sideline, and Coach Griffin was like, "Oh, what if you'd have just went this way?"
Jane, it was one of those, is he okay?
About one punt return.
Well, guys, at the time, and this is going to be a reoccurring theme, Lee was ranked number 8 in the state. They had Larry Ware, they had Quentin Riggins, they had a monster team, as we'll find out later in the year. But they beat us 14-8. We had 2 touchdowns called back in that game, if you remember.
Yeah.
We had a whole bunch of penalties, but all of that was overshadowed by what happened in the first period, the first series. Our number 1 guy goes down. Lawrence gets a bad hit right on that arm and breaks it. And we're now, our leader, we're rudderless ship, the way it felt to me. Now, O'Shawn, maybe Isaac, Pat, who else was filling in? Maybe Raymond. It was kind of by committee.
Yeah.
That filled in.
Yeah.
All the speed in the world with those 3, but not the game experience, certainly not the leadership. That I just remember being in the huddle. I specifically remember seeing Raymond, and he's got those big as baseball eyes. And it's like, it's going to be okay. We're going to be okay.
Yeah. One thing, after Lawrence gets hurt, we're still in the game because O'Shawn's touchdown gets called back. Raymond's touchdown gets called back. But insult to injury, or whatever the saying is, O'Shawn gets hurt also in that game. So
Yep.
we go into the next game with, you know, Lawrence and O'Shawn as a backup out. So, you know, a lot of filling in and stepping up and rotating, you know, is going on because we're still trying to figure out who we are.
And I remember the end of the game. We're not going to be undefeated. We're not going to be this. We're not going to be that. And I remember having a conversation with Coach Andrews, and he's like, "Where's your head, dude? You got to. It's the here and now." And he just reset me and reminded me, we got a whole bunch of great athletes and leaders on this team, and I don't want to get through the evening without emphasizing the leadership from the junior class and their contributions. Pat leading the charge and a whole bunch of other guys that we're going to mention through this hour. But without them stepping up and doing their parts, we don't get to where we got. I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. Now, we lose that game on a Monday.
Yeah.
We turn right around, and a few days later, we play a terrible Kendrick High School out of Columbus. We always used to beat the snot out of them, and we did again this year, 24-7. Not much to mention unless you guys have specific recollections of that team. Thankfully, that's who is next on our schedule.
Yeah,
that did help us. That helped us just the feeling of ourselves and saying, hey, okay, we can do this, guys. Let's move this thing forward.
Then for game 3, our third game in 10 days.
it was a Thursday.
We play the Northview Killer, the Achilles heel of our program over the years, Sidney Lanier out of Montgomery. How those guys continued to beat us year in, year out, I don't know. But our offense was not clicking. We lost 14-9, and we're now sitting at 1-2 after 3 games. I didn't feel good about that. Not at all.
No, definitely down. But again, it was one of those, you always still feel like, you know what, we should have or we could have beaten these guys. It's not like, hey, we're, you know, yeah, our record is not showing well, but
yeah,
you know what, it always felt like, hey, we're better than our record.
We remained competitive. We didn't get blown out. I'm not saying that, but we just didn't have that oomph. We didn't have that confidence. Our leader is out. He's still out. We go into the 4th game in Dothan, I think. Chalk-to-a-Hatchet. We played Fort Walton Beach. We lost. It's our first overtime game of the year. We lost 24-17. And I specifically remember overthrowing you down the sidelines that I wish I still could have that ball back. But anyway.
I got hurt that game too.
Say again?
I got hurt that game.
What do you remember about that, Lonnie?
That's when it's like the past 2 years, that tight end, he blindsided me, caught me on my ankle.
That was a big dude. He went on to play Division I, maybe at Florida State. I don't remember his name. He was huge.
Yeah,
that was they had a bunch of talented players. All right, 25 days after Dawsey gets hurt, he returns to the field. This is our homecoming. We're playing number 9, Central of Thomasville, Georgia. And whatever spark Lawrence gave us, we beat the snot out of these guys. We shut them out 23-0. And I'm still shocked 39 years later that we did this.
They were ranked. Were they ranked in Georgia? Were they ranked in Georgia?
They were
undefeated. They were undefeated. Oh, they were number 9. Okay. Wow. Yeah.
I just remember that game. That game, the defense had a really great game too. I mean, they kind of showed up that game, and that was just a turnaround for us. Also, I mean, Coach Parrish stayed positive through all that. I mean, he every game, you like, oh yeah, okay. I mean, I believed every word he said. You know, we got a chance in this. Just keep working hard, doing what we're doing, and I mean, then it started turning around and things happened.
LaRue scores in the first quarter. Clark field goal. Long touchdown. Go ahead, Pat. Go ahead, Pat.
I was just going to say some things are happening some things are happening that we don't recognize because of, real time we're in that moment, but we're getting better each game despite the end result. We are getting better as a team. We tightened up our rotation on offense, and other than Chalk-Tahatchee, the defense, Coach Ragsdale had a 14-point or less rule that he had implemented that season. Other than Chalk-Tahatchee, the defense is keeping their end of the bargain. So we come together that game. To me, the next game was the most critical one of the season. Go ahead.
In the Central Thomasville, which was homecoming, Hogan catches a long pass, and then Cassie had an interception for a touchdown to seal the game. And I just remember thinking, it's our senior year. We won homecoming. That's fabulous. But even bigger than that, what Pat just said, the offensive line has come together. We're starting to click just a little bit on offense. The run and shoot, which, again, nobody was doing that in Alabama at all. We're starting to show that we're a little bit more explosive, if you will, a little more dynamic. But you're right, that 14-point rule. Now, up to that point, we had given up 14-7, 14, 24 in the overtime loss to Chalk-Tahatchee, then 0. And now we got a trend. That defense is really, but this next game, the double overtime win against Enterprise may be one of the top 5 wins in program history. And that's saying a lot because that was an unbelievable game. Pat, I know that's on your mind, so I want you to kick us off on that one.
We watched the Bill Bacon, Harry Wayne Parish war for years. And somehow, I think Ahmed got them once. Otherwise, we haven't got them yet. And I think I think we got them at home. But I mean, again, Lanier and Enterprise are our big games. So we beat Enterprise, and everything came together on our side of the ball. I felt like, okay, we're catching up now with the defense. We got our stuff together, and Quads, it's kept because you're the host and you never get interviewed. You're in your groove now as the quarterback. The way you're operating our huddle, you take it over completely. You and Coach Parrish, if the two of y'all can talk before the play, it's a touchdown. And we also discovered that no one can stop our passing game. Yeah. Between Chris, first down Chris, and touchdown David, you can't stop our passing game. Our offensive line, you can't get through us if it's pass blocking. So Enterprise is just a huge win for the program, but also for us as a team. Our identity is like a lot more intact than it's been all season.
And remember, Lawrence is learning how to throw the ball with that cast. So when I pitch it out to him, you don't know if he's running or throwing. And in fact, he had one of each. He had a 4-yard touchdown run against Enterprise, and he threw an 8-yard pass to Hogan for a touchdown. Yeah. But that win, get this, it's only the second win in program history against Enterprise in 8 years. You're right. We beat them in 81, then we beat them our year. So it's only the second win against Enterprise in all that time.
Bacon always brought some studs in from somewhere, and I can't remember who was their stud that year. It was either DB or running back.
They had Calvin Flowers was their big running back.
That's him. Yeah, that's him.
They had the big lineman Thompson, but was he the year before? They had 2 linemen who ended up year to year going to Alabama, and I can't remember the other fellow's name, but the other fellow was our year. Huge. Charlie Dare. Huge dude. Yeah. But Lonnie, I want to see if you remember this. In the second overtime, the defensive line made a stop that stopped their 2-point conversion that would have won the game for them. Cassie, and I want to say Chris Parker, came up shoulder to shoulder and just took him down. And you're right there clogging up the middle in the second overtime.
Yeah, they triple team me.
Well, guys, I
Yeah,
gotta pause us for just 2 seconds because we got a whole bunch of Cougars in here in the house. Carlisle Morris, one of our biggest fans back then and still, says to tell y'all hello. The memory, the history, the person you do not dare question their memory. Shirley C is in the house, and Shane knew exactly who I was talking about.
Let's see.
We got Jason Mullins a few years behind us. We got Mark Saffold, who was on our team. Mark, I hope you're coming to the reunion. Hope Mickey is too. We got Norris Thomas, who moved out of town, moved away after he didn't go the whole route with us, but middle school we had him. But guys, by the time we take care of Enterprise, we're starting to right the ship. The record is starting to balance a little bit. And I think we've got some momentum. And then we take on Foley at Foley. And after the 84 year, where I hit you, Chris, deep with no time left at home for our homecoming, Foley didn't want any of us because we took care of them for their homecoming our senior year down there. Again, 33 seconds to go. I hit Chris on a 19-yarder, and then Clark ties the game with the extra point, and then we win it in overtime. And I think we got Foley's number, don't you, for those 2 years?
We did. Yeah. It was good times. Good times.
Keith, what about those long bus rides back from Foley and other places? How much fun were those?
Yeah, those were lots of fun. But when you won, it was a whole lot better.
Oh yeah.
A little bit.
True.
I tell you, I remember, the rides there, though, we were quiet, we were focused. That was one thing I always remember, that, be quiet, focus, get ready. But those trips back were a whole lot of fun if you won. That's for sure.
Shane, what do you remember about school spirit and what was going on during the early parts of the season?
I mean, we still had the support, I just, I don't ever remember them, seeming like, oh, this season's over. Nobody gave up. Nobody. Players didn't, students didn't, teachers, coaches, nobody counted us out, even when it looked, things weren't going that great. I mean, stadium was still full. I mean, it was just a great group. And I say this all the time whenever I talk about this, especially with Bernard. I mean, that was a magic time. It was just, my kids have gone to that school, and I just tell them stories like, oh man, you just wouldn't believe. Of course, it's making some comebacks now, but it's just trying to describe it. It was. I mean, we just had a great student body. What I remember, now you guys may know some, other stuff that I was not aware of, but I mean, from what I remember, I mean, from the teachers, everybody was still in our, pulling hard for the Cougars.
Well, we're sitting at 4-3 heading into Blunt. Again, no offense to that 1985 Blunt team, but they stunk. We were up 34-6 going into the fourth quarter. And Lonnie, I'm not putting this on you or Shane, but uncharacteristic, you guys gave up 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, so it made it look like it was closer. But I remember Coach Hicks and Coach Griffin they were on fire. They were so mad at the end of that Blunt game because they expected us to shut them out.
Well, I remember the first play from scrimmage. I was out there, and this kid came out and he did a 360 and took off. And I was the only pass interference I ever had. I just grabbed him because I knew he never let him behind you. I was like, Griffin's going to kill me, but I'm not letting. He was small and fast and wiry, and he was gone unless I grabbed him.
15 yards is a whole lot better than 6 points.
Yeah.
And get yelled at in film. That's right.
Yeah.
Now we got LaRue Freeman in the house, Killer Rue.
Oh, Rue.
Rue is who started off the scoring against Blunt. He took it 60 to the house, straight up that middle. And some of my most memorable epic collisions for Lonnie and Rue when we were having scrimmages. It was like two just monster. Golly, the sounds. It was like shotguns.
Yeah, when someone hit LaRue, they didn't want any more of it. They started kind of arm tackling after that first shot. It was like, hey, so if we could get him going, it was a hard go.
Pat, what was it? I want to take you and Keith to blocking in this new offense. It's a quick hit. There's nothing long and drawn out. You're not having to hold those blocks for 3 or more seconds. It's quick.
Yeah.
So different than the offenses we had been running in the previous couple of years.
Much more like what a lot of offenses run today, where you're essentially just shielding and so forth. It's not it's different, obviously, than it was with the wishbone, and I remember there was an awful lot of pulling, playing guard, you're pulling, you're moving, and being a really slow guard, that was not very good for me. But, I remember the constant practice, the work, the footwork and so forth. And, I remember, with the wishbone, it was 3 yards in a cloud of dust. You come off the line and you hit, but that was so much different. Pat's got a lot better memories of it because he was right in the middle of it a whole lot more than I was.
Pat, before you chime in, I want it restated on the record that I outweighed both of my tackles that year. My blind side was Rufus, my front side was Pat, and I had them both by 10 pounds or more. That ain't right. But I will tell you, they were the two toughest guys
They were
by far, because they were both scared of Mama Ruth.
Back. From a blocking perspective, it's great because, again, that season, when you look back at it, everything that is supposed to happen is happening. We're getting better every game, individually and as a unit. So by the time we get there, we know Dewey and Chris are great at trapping. Kevin and I are great at the sweeps. And the most important thing is we're a great pass blocking line, to the point where it was one thing I wanted to share in the Foley game. You literally told us, listen, count to, it was either 3 or 5. And if I haven't thrown the ball, let them come and sack me. It was that fast. And we got good at that. And thank goodness, because this is what takes us through the rest of the season and gets us through a lot of the tough times down the line. And finally, one great thing, Coach Parrish is an offensive lineman. So the halftime of every game, you and him walk over to the 5 of us and ask what's working, what's not working, and that dictates the second half offense. So we have a lot of involvement. To be the only ones on the field that never touched the ball, we had a lot of involvement in kind of the flow of our offense.
I do remember going into that Dothan High game. We're 5-3. We don't like those guys at all, but we've been competing against them our whole lives. Some of them are our friends we don't want to admit, but some of them are. But that's our competition, and they had their athleticism over there was equal to ours. And they had more success going into that game than we did. And as much as it hurts us all to say this, losing to them was a blessing in disguise for us that we'll see in a few weeks. But when Scotty Dees knocked that ball through in overtime, that just broke my heart right there. Losing to Dothan our senior year in that way, and particularly because I failed at a play earlier in the overtime, that just crushed me that night.
Yeah, I definitely had some sleepless nights on that one as well. But like you said, they were probably I would think the second best team that we played that year after Lee.
Up to that point, 100%, absolutely, absolutely. And this game was so close. Field goal by them, 1 yard run by Lawrence, 1 yard run by Tillman, and then a field goal by Clark. And I bet you neither team had 100 yards offense going into overtime. I don't have the stats available to me right now, but it was grinding for every inch on that field. I mean, it was could you imagine if the school would have been combined that year if we'd had one team?
I'd have been in the band.
No. But I do want to share probably my most embarrassing play of my high school career. And I threw a pass a little bit behind Chris. You're going to remember this. It tipped off your hands into the arms of Alex Thomas. Alex is about to get tackled by either you or Lawrence, and he flips it to Teapot. Charles Teapot Brown, one of the strongest pound for pound dudes who ever laced them up in the city of Dothan. My adrenaline is flowing. Teapot is not going to score. I'm going to meet him. I'm going to drill him into the Dothan High sidelines. Well, we collided, and when I woke up, I'm in the Dothan High cheerleader section. Thank goodness he fell out of bounds, or he would have scored inside the 10. But when you go and watch that play on film, don't have anything in your mouth, eating or drinking, because you will do a spit take when you see what happens to me. Trying to show Teapot who's the better athlete. It was awful. Just awful.
Teapot was a beast from middle school. From middle school, he was a beast. Yeah.
Such an athlete. Such an athlete. Lonnie, do you remember that game? Do you remember some of those guys from the Dothan High team?
Yeah, my cousin Jane Ford. You know, I just that game had something to brag about.
Good player right there. Yes, sir. Now, Pat, with you having Ahmed as a few years older, you had what none of us really had, is that I guess those firsthand experiences with the older team, and with Ahmed's relationships or friendships with guys on the other. You were exposed to a lot of that. Plus, how many athletes came out of Young America? It's just, there's still hundreds. So share a little bit about that experience dealing with the Dothan High guys and the older players.
Well, it's Beverly Middle School is awesome because it's the only time that Lakeview and Young America and Bamadale go to school together. So the Dothan High game is very hard for myself, for David, for Frank. We went to Beverly. We know everybody on the other side of that ball. So, losing to them still, it's always going to sting. Also, when you think about the momentum and the role we were on, we unfortunately stepped out of character that night. And fortunately, we stepped back into our identity and our character with how we handle those Ozark next week. That Thursday, Coach Parrish gives a 5-minute speech. Don't get caught up in the hoopla. Don't play their game. No mouthing off. 5 minutes of, we are their biggest game. They are not our biggest game. We're not playing for a city championship. So we're level set as a team. But I also saw when you get caught up in that moment and it's the only game where you know everyone on the other side of the ball, and you have all of the city there watching, and played their game more than ours, because even though they were bigger and stronger, they were not faster than us. And, as the squatty bodies, our nickname, we out-finessed everybody. We should have got them. And again, the defense does their job. They don't get more than 14 points. So, that's always going to be a tough one. And there was a repeat my senior year. So never was able to get them. And we should have both years.
Going into that game, the Dothan game, they're 6-1. They're 6th in the state at that time. Their only loss was a 13-7 loss to Carver of Montgomery. They had already beaten Lee of Montgomery 17-0. That's how strong they were going into that game with us. Now, we lose that game 13-10. We're 5-4. We're dejected. It's life sucks right now because you never want to lose to those guys. But you're right. We righted the ship against Carroll, took it out on, beat them 19-0, and ended the season at 6-4. Excuse me. O'Shawn scores in that game, Lawrence scores in that game, and Rue scored in that game, and we shut them out. Second shutout of the season for the defense. But something key happens because we're now the runner-up in our division or in our area. Dothan is number 1, so it pits them against Phoenix City, Central Phoenix City, with Bo Peep and James Joseph. And there were a bunch of guys on that team, but we're the last ranked 6A team in the playoff rankings at 6-4. So who do we get paired with? The number 1 team, the undefeated Opelika team that features Sean Smith, Parade All-America defensive back extraordinaire, Greg Taylor, phenomenal quarterback. I mean, there's a whole host of those guys.
Yeah, the offensive line was, I think his last name King.
Yep, you're so right. And we had the pleasure of going to their house, going to Opelika. And I remember riding into town, and the whole city is shut down with all, you see it on TV all the time in movies, gone to the game, go Bulldogs. We had no chance being in that game. Somebody pick it up from here. What do you remember?
I remember just going there and just looking around because that was my first time ever been to Opelika. And I remember a friend of mine used to tell me, if y'all win, make sure y'all get on the bus and get out of there. They will fight you.
Those are true words.
My mind was there to go there and show them what we got. We got there for a reason. Let's do our job. That's the only thing I remember. Other than talking to King after the game.
Well, we end up winning that game 23-17. Isaac scores in the third quarter. And let's see, Lawrence scores. Isaac scored twice. No, I think that's wrong. I don't think Isaac scored that second touchdown. I thought it was Hogan that scored that touchdown, but I can't remember. I have to go back.
Isaac had a great game. He might have scored twice because I remember our sweep was killing them that night, and we were on point. And two things I do remember: one, the Foley game. Again, I referenced that. We had experience going into someone else's house and beating them, so we're not afraid of Opelika. And two, the biggest motivation: if we win and Dothan High wins, we get another shot at them. So I remember our game ends before theirs, and someone has a little radio, and me and Isaac are listening, cheering for Dothan High, because if we beat Opelika, we get to go back and have round 2 with Dothan High, and we know, going to be a different outcome this time.
We win that game, and I remember being just amazed. I remember looking at their side of the field, and it's like their dog had been shot. Their balloon, the air is out of the balloon. Whatever metaphor you want to use, they were in shock. Chris, you remember that time period?
I do. I did score in that game. Lawrence threw me a pass, but they were fired up, and it was we didn't really understand why the coaches were like pushing everyone to the buses, like, hey, let's move this thing on, guys. We got to get out of here. It's like, no time to celebrate, which we didn't do that much anyway. We were a class team. Our coaches were class. Our team was class, there
was no excuse for them throwing rocks at our bus or whatever they threw. Keith, do you remember one of our students, Kenneth Franks, got stabbed?
I was trying to remember who it was, but I did remember that somebody got stabbed that night.
Yeah. You
It's
know,
crazy.
We're just trying to get out of there. But you know, here's the thing. After we won that game, I guess I'm just stupid or something. I knew we were going to win the state championship. I guess I was naive. You might say. There was one time, and I'm sure we're going to get to this in a minute, Bernard. There was one single time after that, between that and us beating Huffman, that I started questioning just a little bit, and I bet y'all can guess which game that was.
we're gonna get
We
to
all
it.
know.
Don't worry.
Yeah.
We'll get there. We'll get there. I will say, Keith, I did not have the full confidence that you did about state at that point. I was just pleased that we as an offense clicked a little bit better, that we made less mistakes. I knew our defense would do their thing. It was the offense going to come through. But you're so right, Pat. We've now gone into 2 hostile territories in the last 6 weeks and beaten them both on their territory, their homes. We get home, and maybe we already knew, but I don't know if we knew that James Joseph had gotten hurt in the Dothan High game.
They beat them. They beat them what, 10-7 or something like that. I think. Yeah, it was a close game, even with him getting hurt.
So now we get Central Phoenix City.
Yeah, and he's not there.
Coming to our house, and he's not there. And all the scoring is done in the first quarter. And this is how in the world, maybe they were just, again, their leader is out and they didn't have much else to rely upon. But the defense pitched a shutout, 3rd one of the year, against a very, very tough team, number 6 ranked team at the time. Lawrence scores in the first quarter. Clark kicks a field goal. It's 10-0. Nobody scores after that.
And that's where you mentioned our juniors, Derek Flowers and Chris Parker and Cazenave and Ross Morris. And I mean, these guys, man, it was just awesome. I mean, our confidence in the defense taking care of business, it was kind of over the moon at that point. It's like, hey, you know what? They're going to shut them down. We just got to do our part on offense.
You know what I loved about the defensive backs? The spirit, Shane, the spirit, and Mike Henry. Are you kidding?
Henry, yeah, I was going to say, don't forget Mike.
Yeah.
He, to me, was an extension of Coach Griffin on the field. Even sounded like him sometimes. That high voice.
You could hear him. You
Still
do
is.
it.
Now, guys, we've won the 2nd round of the playoffs. We're sitting at 8-4, and we're a little bit on cloud 9 because nobody expected us to beat those 2 teams back to back. The pep rallies. I don't want to get out of here without talking about the importance of pep rallies and school spirit. Those teachers, they were diehard fans of the program. They would do anything to support what we were doing. The pep rallies. Keith, talk about the pep rallies.
Well, let's don't stay home and hear about it. Let's go out and see about it. I've been a teacher, an administrator, a coach, not a very good coach, but a coach over the years, way back then. And I've never experienced pep rallies that were like our pep rallies. I mean, it was just, we went in there, it was business, it was all business. Of course, we were sitting there laughing at some of the foolishness and everything, but and then Dr. Smith would come up and do that and click his heels. And it's just the best thing. I mean, those are some of the great memories that I think a lot of people have, whether they were on the team or not on the team.
When there's 1,600 students in that school, finishing the poem with him as we're walking out and the fight song is going, that's as good as it gets right there.
Yeah. Then we'd load up and we'd go to the movie theater usually and watch part of a movie.
Right.
Then
that was weird.
Yeah, we'd always go watch part of the movie. We're kicked back, and then we would go eat. And I remember one time, and it was not that season because it was Shaughnessy and those guys. So it must have been our sophomore season. I remember when that happened, one of the buses broke down right in the middle of the circle and was that 84? No, not 84, 231. And I remember those buses were, I mean, they were the hand-me-downs, I think, from about the 50s or 60s.
Duct tape and super glue.
Yeah.
One of the other important things during the pregame prep was they gave us quiet time where we all kind of went to our own separate places and just kind of thought about the game plan and what we're going to do. And so I always enjoyed that 30 minutes or whatever amount of time it was that you could kind of.
I always enjoyed that too.
I'm glad you guys brought that up because I was going to ask you about Rip Hughes on Friday nights. Did you have any rituals? Did you have things that you remember that, like the 30 minutes of quiet time? What were some things that stick out to you? We'll start with you, Lonnie. You remember those nights, Rip Hughes?
Yeah. Every time I go to Rip Hughes, my first idea was to pray. And my next one was think about my mom when she said, "Don't you get hurt. Don't you get hurt. Don't make me go on that field." I'm like, okay, how my mama go on that field and she's not there? So I always make sure that I didn't get hurt when I played. But the memories there, oh man. I was tell my wife, if I ever pass away, cremate me, take my ash and throw on the football field.
Wow. Wow. Pat, what do you remember about Friday nights at Rip Hughes?
The smell of the bread is when we really get our mind on the game and we know we're here now. As soon as you smell that bread, we're here. It's game time. And you've referenced it a lot too. We're underneath the stands. So we literally are hearing the crowd come in, the band march. You know, we're just all that build up to, you know, just that. And then, of course, the prayer, Coach Parrish's prayer before we go out on the field, consistent, you know, we probably could all recite it if we needed to, but that sticks out in my mind. Just, really I give the coaches credit for, they had us ready every game. Definitely.
Keith, Rip Hughes, Friday nights.
All right, this is really a kind of a stupid memory, but I remember when it was the time for the national anthem and going out, and I stood in the same place every time and mouthed the words, and it was just I guess it was part of that ritual. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't playing enough to really have to do this, but I remember something else, and some of you guys probably had to do it. I think there were guys that ate 20 Rolaids or Tums before those games. I don't know. Do any of y'all remember that? I mean, it was just, man, that upset stomach and the nerves and everything that were coming on.
I bet some of the coaches did.
Oh, I'm sure Bubba Johnson did. I remember Bubba Johnson doing it. Yeah. Yeah. Just, it's just, it was an atmosphere there that I'm not going to say it doesn't exist other places and so forth, but it was something that was very special. I mean, no doubt.
I love Friday nights, obviously, at Rip Hughes and everything that you guys just described. But back up, it's the 20-minute ride from Northview, from our campus, to Rip Hughes, going to the games, complete silence. I don't ever remember having listening to music or nothing like that. It was just you're in your thoughts. If there was any talk, you might have talked to the guy sitting next to you, but I remember very, very quiet, just introspection, just getting your mind on your business. And that's one of the most vivid memories that I hold, are those rides going over from school to Rip Hughes.
Yeah, I agree. Every turn, you knew, okay, we're getting closer. Yeah, okay, we're gonna start throwing the ball. Me and Bernard, Dave, Frank, Reg, we're gonna start throwing the ball around in a minute. Yeah. So it was a routine, but then you hear the band. We're like, we may as well be sitting in the band because they're like so loud above us, just rocking, and it's like, okay, let's get ready to go. Let's get ready to go.
And when we ran through the cheer banner and they're playing the fight song, there's some guys who've got to be in the very front named Chris Lee, among others. Then there are others who are going to be in the very back. I'm one of those. Because everybody gets their energy flow differently. Some of the guys got to get knocked upside the head to get going. And then other guys, they channel it a different way. Shane, where were you in that mix?
I don't think I was in the front with Chris, but I kind of like Keith. When they played the national anthem, I would always find a spot, and I was right there, usually with Rufus, especially as the season started winding down, and I started realizing, okay, this is my senior year. This, one of these is going to be my last football game. So I started trying to just appreciate the moment. And usually when the band would play the alma mater, I'd find Chris, and we'd just kind of share a moment there to say, just to make a point to remember these moments because they're going to be gone. And I just remember that, and then the hype and the excitement and the band and running out. I mean, it was just a supercharged atmosphere. It was a lot of fun.
Pat?
I'm bringing up the rear when we run through the banner. And then as soon as we get over to the sideline, all the offensive linemen are kind of huddling up around each other. And we're, I guess because of the size factor, and we don't want to hurt anybody, but we're knocking each other around and getting in each other's faces and just kind of getting hyped up as an offensive line.
If memory serves, Chris, I think you stayed back a little bit with me and didn't get in all that mix.
I did.
And I was such a good buddy to Shane and Rufus. I didn't want to be anywhere near those guys when we were doing the anthem and all that. I just
you were one of the captains usually too. So you were kind of right there with Coach Parrish, and you guys were still discussing game plan, I think.
Well, let's kind of pivot to what may be one of the more exciting games in our school's history. Of course, it's our rematch in Crampton Bowl against Robert E. Lee. And at the time, Lee was ranked, well, there's only so many teams left, but they had not lost but maybe one or two games leading up to that. They had Larry Ware, who had a fantastic career at Georgia. If you remember, Lee won the state title in '86 and was 15-0, and Larry had, I think, 2,000 yards rushing that year. They had Quentin Riggins, who went on to play fabulous career at Auburn. They had Anthony Brown, who played at Auburn. I mean, I could go on and on and on, but they had a team. We're walking into the literal Lions Den for the third round of the playoffs, and frankly, we can skip forward to the fourth quarter because we're just getting our heads handed to us. Yeah. It's 27-10 with 10 minutes and 32 seconds to go, and we got the ball. Now, Rufus tells the story, and two of y'all were in the huddle, so I need some confirmation. Rufus says, I come into the huddle and I say, guys, we got them where we want them. Let's go play ball or something like that. I don't know if I would have said something like that, but I do remember being loose in that huddle. Pat, I just remember thinking, what else do we have to lose by just playing? What do you two remember about that?
You did say we're going to win this game. Whatever variation it was, you did say that to us. Keith may remember something critical for the offensive line. All year long, Dewey is our vocal leader. At the end of the third quarter, Chris Lee pulls us all over. And, Crampton Bowl had the dugouts, if you will. He pulls the whole line, and then he's like, I know y'all aren't going to let me go out like this. So we're not used to Chris ever. He's high energy, but not like serious in tears, like yelling at us. So we come out with, we haven't lost this game yet. The whole Cardiac Cougar thing. And also we went straight to our strength, which was we're about to air this out and the Naumburg-Hogan connection is about to be in full effect. So we, fourth quarter, let's go straight to our strengths. And hey, we left it all on the field, definitely.
To start the game, they returned one of my punts for a touchdown, Patrick Perry. Then right after that, Hogan catches a 56-yard touchdown pass. So we got some momentum right there, 7-7. Then we actually go up because Clark kicks a field goal. But then Larry Ware scores 3 straight touchdowns. We're now down 27-10. 10-20 or so to go in the game. Hogan, 62-yard touchdown. 3 minutes later, Hogan, 20-yard touchdown. 5 minutes later, with 1:21 to go, Hogan in the back of the end zone, and how they let him get by them on that play, and there's no room to move. But here's what happened. And I've interviewed some of those Lee guys on this program, and I know I'm good friends with a few of them, including Quentin. McCracken allows the first teamers to take their pads off. They're talking to their friends on the sidelines. I mean, in the stands. Game's over. But why did they continue to play a 5-man defensive line with one linebacker being Quentin and the rest DBs? I don't know. But whatever you guys did, Pat, you did enough. Chris, I'm trying to leave you out. There were some key catches along the way in there, but David just had their number at the right time, the right place to spring those touchdowns. We go up 28-27, and one of the most comical plays in our years, and Shane, you know exactly what I'm talking about. We go for 2, and I throw a ball, and it gets intercepted by Quentin. And back then, you could not return an interception or a fumble on a 2-point conversion for points the other way. I knew that. Quentin runs right. You watch the film. He runs right in front of me. I could have just pushed him out of bounds. He's running the other way. And then if you watch the tape, there is a blur coming behind him. And the two of them, this is Hogan chasing Quentin Riggins. They snake all the way down inside the 5, and Hogan tackles him inside the 5. They both fall out. End of that play was a delay of game for Robert E. Lee.
It was.
Now we still have to kick off. There's a minute left. Pat, you remember what happens?
Do they throw an interception or?
You remember?
I don't. After that last one, we score. I don't.
That's
okay. Do you guys remember what happened?
It was a turnover. I do remember that.
They actually connected. Yeah, they actually connected on a long pass, and Mike comes across and just nails the guy. He fumbles it. Derek.
Flowers hits him. Mike recovers it. But remember, it was a double pass.
It was a double pass. That's right. Yeah. But it was that was scary.
But when Mike comes up with that ball.
Yeah, and he said that, hey, going our way. Yeah, that was it.
So that's the second time in 3 weeks we've gone into somebody's house
and beat
them.
Yeah.
And that game, I've never, Shane, you know this, some of our friends who had driven up had already been driving home, and they came back.
Wow.
Don't forget about the 4th and 1.
Say it again, Lonnie.
Don't forget about the 4th and 1.
Lonnie got it.
Talk to us.
Don't forget about the 4th and 1 when Larry Ware had to run the pass, and I think he needed 1 yard to get a first down.
Mm-hmm.
And me and Chris Parker both tackled him.
You're so right about that. That was one of the biggest hits of the season, frankly, because that guy he couldn't be stopped. He was next level. You know, he scored, like I said, 3 touchdowns in a row on us.
But like I said, when I got down to him, when I attacked him, I said, "This is my time."
Nice.
All right.
But I tell you, and I saw our defense was awesome. Like you said, in the fourth quarter when they needed the stops, man, I saw Cassie was so tired, and I could see they were running their fullback right at him every time, and he was diving in to fill the hole. Lottie was slanting right each time. Ragsdale had our defense doing what they needed to do, and it was awesome. It was
They
awesome.
only scored 6 points in the third quarter. It was Larry Ware's touchdown. They scored no points in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Our defense. Our defense.
Yeah.
We win that game, and nobody can believe that.
Yeah.
We get home, and we're on cloud nine. And I specifically remember Coach Parrish having one of those, forgive me, guys, a come to Jesus meeting with the team. You better forget about that game because you're going to get smoked by Fairhope if you don't watch it.
Yes.
Because Fairhope had Leon Lett, who played in the pros. They had James Morissette, who went to Auburn. They had Chris Johnson, who punted it. They had some serious talent themselves. But thank goodness they came to our place. But what was not good, if you remember, there was a monsoon the day before, and our field was soaking wet.
Soaking wet. Yep.
Yeah.
And Lawrence saves the day because yours truly drops the ball inside the 2 on what would have been a Lawrence over the top play. He scoops it off the turf and still scores. That's the kind of athlete Lawrence was.
Lawrence was amazing. Yeah. Lawrence was awesome. Yeah.
Well, our 5th overtime game is Fairhope.
Yep.
When Clark knocks that ball through and we win, man.
I remember I was at left tackle on the extra point field goal team.
Mhm.
And I mean, I think they overloaded me because they were coming that way. And I remember after he kicks that, I get up looking for one of the officials to see, did we make it? Like, I didn't know if we made it. And I see him holding his hands up. And that was it.
So now we got
Yeah.
the Lopez brothers, the Fitch brothers, and is there a third tandem of brothers?
Saffold brothers
Thank
and
you.
Bolden brothers. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So 4 sets of brothers make both games.
Nice.
Now we're getting to the final game. The school and the city are going nuts. Remember, when Northview won in 81, that was the first state title football for a Dothan City school in the history of Dothan City schools. Dothan and I had been there in 75 and 76 and lost both years. They lost to Homewood and they lost to Mountain Brook, so they were runner-up when it was 4A. But Dothan still hasn't won a state title. Northview wins it in 81, and now we're going back 4 years later. Lonnie, do you remember going up to Legion Field on that Tuesday to practice and to see the stadium?
I mean, just to walk around and knowing that they called the Iron Bowl at the time. And I just mesmerized the whole time. I'm like, God, we finally made it. That's all I said, we finally made it.
And Keith, we had not played on turf,
We'd
artificial turf ever.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the first time for that. So, I mean, even that was just a new experience. But
Shane, what kind of shoes? Oh, sorry, Keith.
No, I was just gonna say between that being a new experience, the turf, and then just looking like, oh my gosh, we're in Legion Field. That was just someplace that we had seen forever,
And it was kind of like our Hoosiers moment, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Chris, you remember what kind of shoes you were wearing?
Oh, I love the turf. Yeah, those turf shoes that they got. Yeah, those were sweet. The maroon stripe on them. Yeah, that was just right. Just right.
Pat, what do you remember about that Tuesday trip at all?
Don't we have the cool warm-up suits on that Tuesday with our numbers on the front pocket? Yeah, I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
We do. Shane still wears his from time to time. Fun fact.
All right, I'm gonna tell you what I remember about
it.
the trip I guess it was back. Didn't we get like an allowance or something? And we stopped there in Hoover, and there was a Pasquale's Pizza or something. And I remember Patrick, help me, man. I don't know if you were there with us, but a whole bunch of us went into that Pasquale's Pizza. They had a buffet, and I mean, we wiped it out. No, this is bad memory. I shouldn't be thinking about that pizza, but I remember that, man. It was just wiping it out.
I don't remember that stop. I just remember thinking the turf was faster than grass.
Yeah.
So there was going to need to be some adjustment on my part with Chris and everybody. That was my biggest takeaway from being there.
Yeah. And one other thing for me, you referenced it earlier. I made it where he stood. I'm here now. It's my turn. As far as just me and my brother go, it's like I remember sitting in the stands watching him on this field, and now same year, junior year, you know, wow. So that and last but not least, oh man, this is where Alabama and Auburn play. That was on my mind at least. Like, wow, you know, we're on the same field that they play on.
In fact, they played one of the most memorable Iron Bowl games the day after. That's the Van Tiffin 53-yard kick.
Yeah. I remember going and finding, saying, this is where he was right here when he had to kick it.
And guys, we come back up. We have a monster pep rally that morning, that Friday morning. Fabulous. Fantastic. We get up there, and do you remember where we stayed? Do you remember where the hotel's located? I'll spare you the suspense. We stayed at a Holiday Inn near the airport. And
okay.
The reason why is that because the 81 team stayed there. And I still question Bubba's judgment about why we stayed there. But also that Friday, we went and saw what movie over in Hoover? Remember the movie?
Rocky IV. That's it.
Okay.
What do you guys remember about that night or that next day before heading to the stadium? Any memories of that time?
Keith, aren't we roommates?
You and I were, you and I were roommates that night.
Me, you, Dewey, and Tommy. Was it me, you, Dewey, and Tommy?
That sounds right. I think it was. I know you and I were.
Yeah.
I think it was Dewey and Tommy. Yep.
Yeah, and then Chris and Kevin and whomever, I guess, Mark. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So I remember that part.
I had Clark, I had Jamie Holman, and bless his heart, Reggie and his hair. He was so worried about that hair.
That's funny.
Y'all had a diverse room for sure. A lot of diversity.
We were Benetton's ad, weren't we?
I don't remember who I roomed with. That is one thing I do not remember.
They didn't let you room with anybody. You were by yourself.
It may have been.
Guys, we kick off the game, and kind of like a lot of our other games, we fall behind immediately. They march down the field, they score. We don't do anything on our end. They get the ball back, and they're marching again when the most iconic and memorable play in program history occurs. They run a little option heading left inside the 15-yard line. Bobby jams up the quarterback or the running back. Ball comes loose. AOK is on the spot. Number 8 scoops and takes it to the house, 90-plus yards. The most iconic play. It not only is a fabulous play on both of their parts, but it turns the momentum of the game on its head.
It did. And yeah, from then on, I don't know. Like you said, it was just kind of a release, an exhale or something for us, because it was, after that, it seemed like it was, hey, let's get back to what we do.
Absolutely.
And then,
that's
the offense,
right there.
The offense just put on a show then. It was, you guys were all
between them scoring the first time and them scoring with 1 minute to go at the end of the game, we score 5 touchdowns.
Wow.
Aristotle. Then I throw a short one to David. Then Isaac. I loved that counter play. Nobody could stop it. When Isaac got to the second level, you were not going to catch him, and they did not catch him on that game. Now, I think the play that frankly put the nail in the coffin, we had one play left in the first half. We had like 4 seconds. We had the ball. I guess we're about the 35. I can't remember exactly where we were. And again, as he always did, I can beat my guy. I am open. And much like Randy Moss did many years later, that hand went up as soon as he got 2 steps in, and all he had to do was go run under it, and he did. And David scored to close out the first half. And frankly, that put us at 25-7, and that sealed the game, in my opinion. We were not used to that. We were not used to these large leads in important games. But Huffman, they were stacked themselves. They had just beaten the number 2 team in the country that week. USA Today had J.O. Johnson out of the Huntsville area, and they spanked them. They had Philip Doyle, who went on to Bama. They had Yancey Giles. They had a whole bunch of guys who ended up playing in the next level, but they had not played. They had not seen our offense. They didn't know what to do with it. And even if they did, between Chris's possession catches, Isaac's speed, and David's blazing speed, it was just on me not to screw it up.
We were looking forward to J.O. Johnson, though. We were sure that we were going to be playing them. We didn't even know anything about Huffman.
The only thing I knew about J.O. Johnson is they had gone up and beaten Moeller of Ohio earlier.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And then David scores another touchdown, his third of the game, with about 6 minutes to go. I forgot we played that late into the game, but about that time, Coach Parrish is emptying the entire bench. He wanted to make sure that every player got to play in that game. And they did, as far as I know.
I think so.
Yeah, definitely.
Honey, what do you remember about that game? What do you remember about that team?
Talking to me?
Yeah.
I remember when Coach Perry was telling about the center. I think he said he was All-American. I'm like, really? He's an All-American? It was time for me to put a whooping on him.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
When Lonnie started slamming his hands on the turf, it was like, oh, he's ready. He's ready.
There's a lot of truth in that right there. Absolutely. Keith, what do you remember about that game?
You know, I remember when you're talking about the Aristotle's play, obviously, I mean, that is so iconic. That's the thing. But, you know, it was almost kind of, what's the word? Anticlimactic almost compared to what we had done, the games that we had faced, you know, especially that second half. You're like, is this it? Is this it? I mean, have we done this? And you know, again, I go back to what I say, and you guys know the one time for about 30 seconds that I was thinking, well, maybe this is not going to be it, was that you know, it was the Robert E. Lee game. But I don't know. I had confidence. Maybe it was because I was too stupid and wasn't playing a whole lot and didn't know any better. But, you know, I go back and I'm going to tell you something that I was going to say earlier. I was not with, most of you guys went to Beverly or you went to Girard. I was at Honeysuckle.
I went to Honeysuckle.
Yeah.
Chris Shane and I were at Girard.
Yeah. So Lonnie, do you remember when Coach Parrish came to visit us, you know, at the end of our 8th grade? I don't know if you remember that or not, but I do vividly.
Yeah, he did, because our Coach Campbell was the coach then.
Mm-hmm.
Coach Campbell and Coach Taylor.
And I remember Coach Parrish basically saying, you do this, you work hard, you're going to win the state championship. I don't know. I still, to this day, remember that discussion. And I remember through that entire season thinking, you know, I don't want to get too dramatic and say this is our destiny, but I remember it was like a promise to us. You're gonna win the state championship if you do this. And I don't know, I just had that positive feeling by the end, especially, once we got into the playoffs, that we're gonna win this thing somehow.
I remember in ninth grade, one of the first days that we're over there. And Shane, you may or may not remember this, but it's me and you and Arnold. Rufus and Maddox weren't part of our crew yet, but Bittner was with us, a bunch of us. Coach Parrish was talking about football. And I don't think it was ninth grade. I think this was the day we came over to like preview the school. Mm-hmm. And he's telling us we need to go out and sign up for football and all this. And he looks at me and I said, Coach, I'm going to come out in 10th grade. Baseball is my sport. And he says, no, you're not. You're coming out in ninth grade. I'll see you in a couple of weeks or something like that. Wait, a good start right there, wasn't
it? Yeah, a good start.
Guys, one thing like that I remember was, and it may have been our 10th grade year, I don't remember exactly, but they had made a video of the 81 team, and it was set to music, the theme from like Greatest American Hero. And I just remember watching those guys celebrate on that field, running with the flag, and I was like, I want to do that. And I mean, that thing stuck with me, just to always push more. And, I bought into whatever, when Coach Parrish said, if we just fight, I believed what he said. When we would rally around at the end of practice and he'd say, if you'll just do this, if you'll do this, I was just like, okay, yeah. I mean, I believed every word.
Spoiler alert, Shane did that exact thing with Rufus.
I did. I got to run the field with Chris with that flag.
That video you're referring to are the highlights from the 4A 1981 game, and they're on my YouTube channel. So you guys can watch that, and it is set to the Greatest American Hero.
Yeah.
And it's fun to watch those guys play too.
Oh my goodness.
That team, that was the most dominant team in history. 13
ever.
They were crushing.
And to see that wishbone run, that is fun to watch.
But here's the answer. That state championship game against Carver of Birmingham was their worst game of the year. Penalties, fumbles, and they had 1 or 2 kicks blocked, but they had enough to win the game. They were dominant the whole year.
I remember watching them at Rip Hughes, and I remember when Larry kicked off one time and kicked it through the other end zone uprights, and I was like, "Oh my word!" I was just blown away by that.
He used that steel cut off. Yeah.
I just, I remember that team more than as much as ours. I remember the guys, the defensive backs, going to those games and just watching. I mean, they were like superheroes to us. I mean, it was just an awe of everything they did.
John Kite, Herschel Bird, Leon Morris, Bruce Johnson was in there. Pye Whaley was the 4th starter. They called themselves the Soul Patrol. And that year, the 81 year, Pye Whaley twice, he had basically the hand of God to save 2 games in the playoffs. If you go back and watch the last play of the game of 81, Pye comes out of nowhere and knocks that ball away.
There's also one in the yearbook from that year where the scoreboard's in the background and they're going up and he's making the interception in the end zone. If you know where the scoreboard was at, I mean, it was awesome.
Guys, when the clock struck zeros to win at the end of our game, and we're up 32-15. For me, it was just one of those surreal time stops moments for my life. Chris, what do you remember about that time?
No, that's I agree. I mean, we're champions now. I mean, and no one can take that away from us forever. We're champions. Best in the state. And so that's just awesome. And great coaches, great teammates. So it was fun. Like I said, I don't know. We all got along so well. It was just, I thought we gelled very well. There were some times where there were some dust ups, but by and large, no. We were a smart team and we liked each other.
Pat?
I did it too, just the brother reference. And then I remember him telling me, capture that moment. So I stayed on the field. I was one of the last people to come into the locker room afterwards because I just stayed out there and, looked around and captured it. And then that weirdness too, because not only were all of our games close, their game was so close. So I'm just expecting this thing to be overtime down to the wire. And second half, we seemed like we watched the game more than we played at times. But just knowing we did it, and not then, but looking back and saying, now, wow, we know what it takes to win a championship. From spring to right now, we know what it takes now. There's no secret. We know the weight room, the summer, just how every single week and everything added up to this moment. And, a deserving bunch. And 81 was his best team, but I will say we were his best work. What he did with us, squatty bodies, because again, 81 was a junior college team, y'all. I saw it real time. They competed for starting time. They had that kind of vibe and energy. Everyone's good, but what he did with us and the way he brought us together and coached, because I saw him coach them and then I saw him coach us. He adjusted so much for the level of talent, and was smart enough to say, which we did, I'm going to make sure y'all have the heart. And, no one can question, cardiac or not, our team had heart beyond belief.
The 81 team, their number twos should have been ranked number 2 in the state. That's how good that team.
Absolutely.
Keith, I remember at halftime, we're up 25-7, and the offensive coaches hadn't been in that spot too often during the year, particularly the playoffs. And I just remember Coach Parrish emphasizing, we can't let up. We can't let up as an offense. No mistakes. Yeah. I mean, they were still coaching us.
No, they were
coaching hard
all the way through. They were still coaching us all the way through. You're absolutely right. And, I think that was probably, we had not had, like you'd say, we didn't have a game like that. And I think maybe that was a concern that, hey, they're going to let down because they think they've got it. But, going back to what's been said about the work and the team, that's what was just kind of magical about that team, is that I think we played for each other. And, and the fact that the coaches were there and they supported us and they were constantly working because they wanted us to get better. And like you say, here it is. We've played 14 games. This is the 15th game of the season. And we're at halftime. We've played, 29 halves of football so far. In that 30th half, they're still coaching.
So, plus 5 overtimes.
Plus 5 overtimes, which I think is still a state record.
And 2 of those overtimes were double overtimes.
Yeah.
But guys, I'm looking at Huffman's playoff run. They beat Talladega 31-8. They beat Mountain Brook 31-7. They beat Vestavia Hills 25-13. They blew the doors off of J.O. Johnson at their place, beat them 36-7. They weren't slouches at all. They just hadn't seen our offense.
Right.
Wow. Lonnie, what do you remember about when the final gun or the final seconds tick off the clock? What do you remember about the celebration?
What I remember, looking at our student body and, our family and friends, and basically just seeing my brother there. And that's what more kind of got me, just seeing him at the game and just got in my thought, like, we really did it. We really did it. We state champs. Looking at the guys, I'm like, we couldn't do it without them. I could not do this without them. Now, this is my family. That's the only thing I kept thinking. This is my family.
Mm-hmm. Lonnie, we all felt that way, my friend. We sure did. I remember everybody's in the middle of the field celebrating, and coaches cheer. Everybody's there. A few of the friends and has snuck onto the field. And I remember just standing there by myself and looking around. And I didn't want that moment to ever end. I just wanted to soak it in and watch the enjoyment of everybody around me. And then watching Shane and Rufus and Manny run like fools with that flag. If you remember, one of our theme songs became "Loving Every Minute of It" by Loverboy. And then the other song was "We Are the Champions."
Mm-hmm.
And how many times were those songs played through the playoffs, and particularly at the end of the year? We're getting close. We've been going for a while, but we're getting close to the end. I don't want to leave out any of our other seniors who we hadn't really mentioned, who were so vitally important on the defense. Our heart and soul were the two linebackers, Willie Banks and Cassie Butler. Without those two, who went on to play Division I football, our season is completely different. No offense to Chris Parker and whoever else was backing them up, but those guys were studs.
Without a doubt.
Oh, yeah.
Without a doubt. Speed, smart, talking to they communicated, pretty much ran the defense while he was, coaches on the field. So yeah.
Shane, you got Mark Reeves in the defensive backfield with you.
Yep.
Who am I leaving out? Defensive line, we got Joey Sheffield, Manny flip-flop, but he played defense that year, I think.
Yeah.
We got Lonnie. Who else is on defense?
Bobby, Ross, Manny, Lonnie, Chris, Cazenave, Cassie, Willie, Mark, late Tim Reynolds, Derek Flowers, Mike Henry, Aristotle. That's our defense. Never will forget.
That's a senior, junior heavy defense right there.
Yep.
Fun fact, 14 players off of that team, the 85 team, regardless of the class, 14 guys played in the next level, with Lawrence obviously going to the pros. On the 81 team, 18 players off of that team, including Larry Roberts, pros. Now, on the offense, who am I leaving out from a senior standpoint who was on our offense, or have we mentioned everybody tonight?
You got LaRue, Chris, David, Keith,
Kevin,
yourself, Kevin.
Again,
We didn't have a
until
lot, guys.
Lawrence.
Stanley.
Say again?
Let's see.
Until Lawrence gets hurt and O'Shawn and Ramon fill in, the offense is a junior senior offense.
Mm-hmm.
That's all that leadership. That's all that experience.
Yeah.
Now, we're getting to be old men. It's been 39 years since that state title.
Oh,
Wow.
you had to say that, huh?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Where I'm going with this, you guys all look good. Stop. Where I'm going with this is legacy. Those two state titles are still the only ones for Dothan City Schools.
Wow.
We're all still hurting a little bit with the merger of the schools, but it is what it is. And we've got our big meeting coming up. But Shane, you live in Dothan. Lonnie, you live in Dothan. How often, maybe not as often now, but over the years, does it come up? The people in town talk about that season. Do you hear it from time to time?
I do. I hear lots of time. Even with my head boss man, the Congressman Paul Lee. That's my head boss man at WRC. He mentioned to me, and Tim Webb, who's over, I think he was the chairman of WRC. I heard through him. He talked about both of the games, the 81 and 85. How good we was. It kind of, to me, it made me feel good to hear people talk about us. How good we was, and someone wish the name would never change. It should have been like this. It could have kept the rivalry going, which I still believe that should have kept the rivalry going. But other than that, that's the only thing I hear, remember.
Keith, I know that our practice field holds a very special place in your heart. I know that playing football for Northview was a highlight. Why was it so important, and what was the specialty?
Well, I think the lessons that we learned, the hard work, the work ethic that was instilled in us, the teamwork, the camaraderie. I can hear Coach Parrish saying, if you quit on this, you're going to quit on your wife, you're going to quit on your job, you're going to quit on this, you're going to quit on everything. I remember one day, it was the beginning of that our 11th grade season. I kind of was feeling sorry for myself and decided, I don't know. Maybe I need to just give it up. And I missed practice one afternoon. That's the only thing that cost me from getting the Ironman trophy that year, for being at every practice. And I remember calling Coach Parrish and saying, hey, Coach Parrish, I was not there today. And I don't remember the exact conversation, but I remember him saying, yep, Keith, I noticed you weren't there. I'll see you tomorrow morning. And, remember going, and I rolled and rolled and rolled that day. You guys know what I mean. Like my son's team, they do rolls, they get to run 5 yards and kind of flip, and they would run 5 yards. Well, that ain't how we did it. And we'd line up on the goal line, or I can't remember if it was the goal line or the end line one, and roll all the way down the field. But those things have stuck with me my entire life. And where Bernard's going with that is he knows this, that I drove my at the time girlfriend, who was going to be my wife, to Dothan, just to it was the first time we'd ever been. And I'd already decided, I know this is kind of cheesy, but that football field was such an important part of my life. It was such an important part of my, development as a man. And I just walked around. I said, hey, let's go. I don't want to show you where I played football, where we practiced. And right there on the 50-yard line is where I proposed to her. And I mean, it's kind of cheesy, I know, but it to me, I always reflect back on that what I did, the work ethic that I've learned from that. And, hopefully I have 2 sons. One of them just got married himself. And the other one is a sophomore at University of South Alabama. And I hope that some of that stuff I've been able to carry over to them, and I think that's what's cool, is that Coach Parrish and, and Coach Ragsdale and Coach Sellers and all those guys, the lessons that we learned, not only did it affect us, but I think in many ways it affected our kids and the next generations. And I think that's just so important.
Beautiful, Keith. Thank you.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. That is a special place. My kids, they're still there, and the trophies, I go in, I still look at those trophies. A lot of everybody's walking by them. They don't know what they mean to me. And that whole place, I mean, with all the blood, sweat, and tears on that, and all the hours on that field. And I remember the weeks after that game, and like any other season, when you spend all that time with that group, and then it kind of disperses, we all moved on to different things. Bernard, you probably went to baseball, and then basketball was going on. And I remember the teachers that next week were like, okay, back to school. And I was like, wait a minute now, we won the state championship. We shouldn't have to do this for a while. But I mean, it's still, I mean, it is a special place. And I'm for sure, I mean, I know it built, there's characteristics as a man that I know I learned at football practice and from those coaches, and from, being out there with your friends and going through all that and surviving together. I mean, it certainly played a big part of my life as well.
Here's a fun fact you guys may not know about Shane. Shane, why was December 7th, 1985 a special day for you?
It was my birthday.
Y'all know that?
No.
We won the state championship on Shane's birthday. How about that?
That's awesome.
Nice.
How about this, fellas? When we played our 15 games, 10 of the teams, 10 of the opponents at the time we played them were ranked in the top 10 of their respective states.
Wow.
Believe it.
How about that?
Believe
How about that?
Pretty much every stat says we shouldn't have been there, nor should we have won that trophy. Every stat says that practically.
And
But
we
that's
may
why
have.
that's why you play the games, though.
Yep.
Yep.
I haven't gone back and done the research, but our 4 losses may be tied with the most number of losses of a state championship team in 6A in probably 30, 40 years span. I'm gonna go back and look that up, but yeah. Chris, what is you live up north, you don't live in the south anymore. What's the legacy? What's the title? What does all this mean to you over these years?
You know what? Like you said, it was a foundation. It was a foundation for us and excellence. And, you know, going from there, I knew I was going to Alabama. And so it was get out there and work your butt off, whatever you do, you know, occupation, whatever. And so that's what we've taken. I mean, like you said, I think the coaches put so much of that positivity in us. And after probably every one of Coach Parrish's interviews, he'd say, "Man, those guys, they work so hard. I would hire every one of them because they do not give up. They don't quit." And so that's that mentality that he put into us. And so, yeah, that's it.
Lonnie, 1985 was Coach Randy Ragsdale's first year coaching in high school. He was 24 years of age. We were 18-year-old knuckleheads, 17 and 18-year-old knuckleheads. What did Coach Ragsdale mean to you? What did he bring to the defensive equation that year?
Man, he mean a lot. You know, the mentality he put in us, you know, how to get us in the right direction and motivate us and just teaching them how to be mans, you know, on that defensive line, how to be tough, and how to go at it, you know. Don't let them push you, you push them. You know, it was just, to me, you know, like I always say, like a family. He was like my uncle on the football field. You know, the big brother that I can talk to, you know, put me in the right direction. But say sometimes, you know I went, sometimes I didn't feel good and didn't know what I was doing, you know, knowing I could go to him and talk with him, you know, he always pepped me up in the right direction. And I appreciate that. And I mean, every chance I get, I think about him, you know, a lot of time, I think one time I got up with him and told him, you know, how he was doing. And I really love the job he did for us. And I thank him for everything he done.
Well, you guys are going to see him in about 3 weeks. He's coming to the reunion. Pat, I want to leave final words with you tonight. We've touched on each of these coaches, but I want you to share, because you have a unique perspective. You have the longest history of knowing these core coaches. How important were those coaches to building the program, to gaining the trust of all the young student athletes, and then bringing us forward as men?
huge. And I can definitely say, not just seeing our coaches, but being able to compare, because like I said, all my friends from Beverly are at Dothan High. So I know what kind of culture they're operating in compared to ours. Consistent, definitely consistent, and definitely care more about us as human beings and individuals, which all of us experience off the field in some capacity, classroom, disciplinary action, what have you, showing that they got our backs, and then gaining our trust that their way was, you know, gonna work. So to think about how old they were, how old we are now, and looking back and saying, wow, those young men pulled off some huge stuff. You know, we were fortunate to be the beneficiaries of catching them at, you know, at a good time in their coaching careers and their lives, to be able to dedicate as much as they did to us. And just earlier, y'all talking about what you take away, learning how to be a team player, because this is going to be important in the rest of our lives, and work. How to be on a winning team and play your role. So if you're marketing, you're marketing. If you're sales, you're sales. And then accountability, because I joke about it, but the thing I feared the most was the Saturday morning Harry Wayne Parrish show, where the offense is in the front classroom. There's a cup in one hand, there's a clicker in the other. And regardless, again, at the beginning, it made sense because we're losing. But he's consistent, and he's going to show us with several clicks. I always wondered how it was for you all on the defensive side, but no, the film don't lie. And I know for me and Keith, to be standing up as an offensive lineman and the play is not over and you're not hitting someone and he can just, play that highlight film 10 times. So just the truth, like he told us, what we're doing now is preparing us for life. And now, that we are where we are, we're all, amen witnesses. Yeah, fact.
Side note, as the season went on, I enjoyed the film room much more.
I remember the film room that when we beat the team from Georgia and Cassie intercepted and took it in the end zone, I was way back. So I was running up behind and I jumped up and tried to do a 360, didn't make it, fell on my tail. And I was like, my first thought was, I hope that didn't get on the film. But it did, and Coach Rag still pointed it out that next time we saw film. But I was so excited the defense scored.
Gentlemen, you all are my brothers in arms from back in the day and now. I am so honored to call you my teammates, my friends, and my brothers. I look forward to seeing you guys in a few weeks. Thank you for sharing your observations, your stories, your emotions from a special time of our lives. So thank you all for being here tonight. It means a lot. It really does.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
Pat.
Good to see y'all.
Enjoyed it so much.
Great hanging out with you seniors.
Hey,
Y'all take care.
Thank you,
appreciate
Patrick.
you, Pat.
You guys be
Awesome.
well. Take care.
Awesome.